Irvine. I'm the co-founder of Raise Ventures based here in Belfast in Northern Ireland. We're going to have a chat today about encouraging more females to invest into tech startups. So let's just have a wee quick introduction about why me. So my early career has always been working with startups as a marketeer. I love the creative piece, the vision piece about founders telling their story. I've been involved on both sides of the table in terms of working with startups looking for investment, and I've also worked as an investor looking for startups. My job as part of Raise Ventures is to mentor and look for investment into early stage startups. And I have a real passion for supporting female tech founders and female investors. When I first came into the early stage startup market as an investor, there were traditionally face-to-face meetings that you went along, listened to startup pitches, maybe had a bite to eat and a drink and networked with people in the room. Traditionally, the angel investor network would be slightly older generation, predominantly male, and in those drinks receptions, I've been asked to go and top up the drinks in the room when actually I was an investor in the room. So I think the perception of female investors isn't, as good as it could be, and I think that's why we want to have the talk today to think about female investing. So it all starts with thinking about the audience today, the females working in the tech startups. Looking at some articles, only 17% of women make up the IT specialists in the UK. We know it's dominated by males. We see that females won't always apply for jobs if they don't feel they're 100% qualified. And we need to encourage more females into tech entrepreneurship. And it starts from schools right up into career advice, right up into as you take the first steps into your jobs and throughout the corporate world. And there's some great support locally here in Northern Ireland. I've named a few on the screen. WomenTechmakers today putting on this event, Women in Tech Conference coming up next week with Women in Business, Women Who Code, Product Tank, and the NI Dev Conference. We need to all support each other. We need to support our local girl gang. I'm proud to say that we run some tech events ourselves. They're monthly, and we have a panel of speakers every month, and 50% of those speakers would be female. So leading on from that, we've obviously got a good range of females move into starting their own businesses and tech startups. We call them female founders. Only 6% of UK women run their own businesses, and compared to 15% maybe across in Canada or America. Only 25% of entrepreneurs in high productivity sectors or in tech are women. Less than 1% of UK venture funding and investment goes into all female teams. And the bigger barrier that females have, there's a couple of things, securing funding is one of them. Reaching out and making those connections and what I mentioned can be quite a male dominated world. Juggling the business, you've got an awful lot of hats to wear, but also the personal commitments. We all know that there's challenges at home in terms of looking after the house and the family as well as running a business. So we've seen that female founders get less than 1p for every pound that venture capitals invest in UK startups, and that's from a report recently of the British Business Bank. And that's really taken us into an introduction into what we want to speak about today. From the female angels in tech, what are we saying? So let's take a step back. What is angel investing? If you're coming new to this and want to learn a bit more, essentially it's investing directly in the startups or scale-ups, and these businesses have potential to grow, scale, and exit and make a return. And what I'm looking to do is encourage more females to think about angel investing. So despite women being responsible for owning over 45% of the UK's wealth, only 14% of them are angel investors. And we've seen that when female investors back female-led startups, they're 21% more likely to succeed. Female investors add real diversity to the board and to a team from early stage startups, which is either can be led by male or female founders. And that's where they bring different thought processes, different culture, quite often, but more of a calm approach and just different assets, knowledge, skills, and connections to the startup founders. The founders that we work with are, and particularly in the early stage, are quite often one-man bands. and they need to build their advisor networks and they need to build their community around their startup to help them succeed. And that's where we see the angel investors adding real value. So how do we encourage more angel investors? How do you get started? It's I guess the females, we rather talk about other things. We talk about our work, we talk about our family, we talk about our hobbies. We don't often talk about money. And I think it's something that's coming more to the forefront, particularly seen in the boom in the tech industry in terms of saving apps, money comparison platforms, and trying to get people to think about not just spending money but saving money. And then when you save money, then you've got more disposable income to think about using that money and how you can invest it wisely. Over the last 10 years, opportunities for network and connections with other female investors have definitely increased. We're seeing a boom in terms of angel networks, both online and in person, that are female led and looking to encourage the collaboration between females. And it's really important that we learn from others. There's experienced angels out there in the marketplace, and we can learn from them what they've done, what best practice looks like, how they've got started, and how we can take the first steps into this space. So when we're looking at angel investing, it's about, as I said, investing directly into those founders. There is potential high return. These founders will need investment into their tech solution. As we all know, working in the tech sector, you make it once and you sell it multiple times. And if you sell it multiple times into a big market, that's where the opportunity comes. And that's where the bigger players who can't innovate as quickly are interested in buying the smaller companies and generating a return. And that's when the exit comes further down the road. In terms of thinking about being an angel investor, we see it as a rising tide lifts all boats. Get involved, get to know the startup founders, help them by your knowledge and your expertise. The tech experts out there are very valuable to founders. We see two sides. We see industry founders that want to solve a problem, but they don't know how to because they don't have the tech experts. And then we have the tech experts who are the software and tech experts, but they don't know how to bring it to industry. And we see both, and they work well together. Use that expertise and knowledge to help those founders succeed. And I'll talk later about, in terms of your savings and investment portfolio, angel investing can help diversify that. For me, as I said, my background is marketing and sales. I didn't know a lot about the tech sector and I wanted to learn more, and that's why I got involved. So you learn about new technology, new business models, and you make new connections as being an angel investor, which is obviously ties into the networking opportunity. I've met some great, not only founders, but angel investors by working in this space. And the local government in the UK offers some tax breaks. They're called SEIS and EIS tax breaks. Essentially, because it's high risk, the government says if you put some money into these high risk companies, you can get a tax break on your income tax at the end of the year. And we have some more information about that in a workshop coming up. There's obviously risks. We have to say, we're not financial advisors here at Raise, but it's risky. It takes time to generate returns, and quite often you hear the number invest in 10 startups and one of them will be successful, and that one will potentially outweigh the risk and losses of the 9 that don't succeed. How do you mitigate that risk? You think about diversifying your portfolio, maybe not just going into things that you know, looking at things that you don't know. As I said, I was in marketing, so I went and looked at tech, looking for good quality deal flow. For an example, last year, I think there was over 7,000 software as a service businesses launched. So the startup ecosystem is there, and as an investor, you have to look for good quality. Obviously, you have to do due diligence and research and understand these companies, understand these founders and their route to market and how they're eventually going to potentially get an exit. And learn from others. That's what these events are for. Connect with each other, ask questions. There's no question's a silly question. As I mentioned, these tech founders or industry founders have to build something. It takes time. They have to build it to a point where they've got an MVP and customers want to buy, but then there's continuous improvements and investment goes into making the product commercial and making it interesting for an exit. So we have to be prepared to essentially follow your investment, potentially put in more, and there has to be patience. As I said, I started in this space maybe 10 years ago and invested in a couple of companies, and they're still not quite there, the exit opportunity. So it takes time. So thinking I mentioned in terms of your portfolio, so we talked about, basic savings and investable. So the investable disposable funds, looking after this is a job in itself. You have to think personally, what risk are you willing to take? What return would you like to see? And what access to your money or liquidity you would like to have. And there's a range of options out there. These include everything that you would see in the Daily Telegraph in terms of property and stock market, ISAs and pensions, and that would be the three or four that the wealth advisors would mention. Then, as I mentioned, there's funds, EIS funds, SEIS funds. We've seen Bitcoin coming to the forefront more recently. And then obviously there's other types of investment like art and wine, to name a few. And I always think about it in terms of two things: low risk and high risk. Being able to get your cash back quickly and being able to put the cash in and not worry about it, and it'll come back later on. And angel investing is very much high risk and it won't come back till later on. So you need to be able to balance your savings and disposable funds along that spectrum. And when you're thinking about getting started, it only has to be a small amount to get started. As an angel investor going direct, the UK Business Association talk about investments starting from anything from £5,000. And I'll talk later about crowdfunding. Crowdcube, you can get involved with much less into companies just to get a feel for it. So as I mentioned, angel investing, you're taking a percentage stake in these companies. The founder, when they start, they own 100%, and they're essentially selling you a stake in their business and saying, I'm going to work really hard to increase the value of your investment, and we're all going to sell later on. So look to maybe only take a 10 to 20% equity stake, because the founders have to have enough left, the 80%, to be incentivized to grow. Because this is a long-term project and they may not have paid a lot of money at the start. So they need to have the incentive of that percentage ownership to encourage them to stay with the company. And there's lots of ways of getting involved. There's hands-off, where you just invest the cash and you just come along and put the money in, and there's a founder and there's a team that use that cash for their business, and there's not a lot of involvement. Right up to being very hands-on. So thinking about talking to the team, thinking about being a board advisor, thinking about, mentoring and being part of the process. And getting started, you quite often start at just the money and then work your way up as you learn and get to know these companies. What are you looking for? I guess, the audience here all work in tech companies. You know the companies that are good. They have a good team. They have a good tech product. They have a resilient and ambitious founder or founding team. I mentioned earlier, in terms of the customer market, they have a large market of people looking to buy this, the end user, and they have a good business model with good gross margins. There's a school of thought that some investors like to see revenue. We would prefer to call that traction. So when you launch a product, you've got some early stage customers, they're using it, they're giving you feedback, but they're not necessarily paying you just yet. And that can also be seen as traction and market validation. And also these companies can apply to be SEIS and EIS advanced assurance. So it's an assurance to you as an investor that when you invest, you'll get those tax breaks. So that's what you're looking for, to make sure that they've got that document. How do you get involved? There's lots of different ways, and particularly with the advancement of working at home and online pitching events. Attend pitching events, get to know startups, get to know what looks good and what doesn't look good. Get involved with accelerators. There's many throughout the UK and Ireland. There's also an option to think about a syndicate, and that's essentially a group of people that all go in on a deal. They've all talked to each other about it, they all understand it, and the group of money goes in as a syndicate, and you can all help each other in that scenario. Some examples we've seen is, become a board member, become a mentor, become an advisor of a startup before you think about investing. Get to know these founders, get to know what works, what doesn't work, and what interests you. I mentioned earlier in terms of Crowdcube, there was one particular one we supported in terms of Lumino. Recently they went the traditional angel investment route before Christmas, and then they moved into crowdfunding, and actually I think doubled the amount of investment they were able to get access to, and they closed a 1 million investment round on Crowdcube. So it's another way of seeing what companies are out there, getting involved. You don't necessarily have to put a large amount of money into these just to get started. And look for startups on online platforms. There's many platforms available to Angel Investor Network, and Created Capital would be two. UK Business Association would be another. And we all work in the tech sector, but we know that the people behind the deals are the accountants and the lawyers, and they see the deals daily coming across their desks. So they'll know if there's something interesting. So don't forget to talk to them. Where do you look for startups and other angel investors? And wouldn't it be great if we could also find startups and investors that are females? So here's a list of networks, angel groups that I did a bit of research and put together, and the majority of these are female-led. Obviously ourselves here at Raise, we've a female co-founder, and we have 3 out of our 12 founders are female at the moment, and we're focusing to try and increase that. And there's a couple of other angel networks across the UK and Ireland here mentioned that you can go check out their website, check out their events, and just go and learn, and just go and listen and see what they're doing. So I guess, from today, the best support that we can give to the females in tech, the female founders, female investors, is our network and our connections. There is no question that is too small or too silly to ask. And if it's of interest, take those first steps and try and get involved. We need more females in this industry. We need them as workers in the industry. We need them to be founders, and we need to think about investing as well. And if you'd like to get involved, please get in touch with me. Happy to have a chat about how it works and give you some insights, or join some of our events. We have a pitching event called Remote Raise. It's happening on April Fool's Day in the evening. We like to call it Friends, Family and Fools round. It's the first investment round that goes into startups. So we're looking forward to that. And then we run workshops. So we'll be running a workshop specifically on the SCIS and the EIS that I mentioned at the end of April on the 29th. I'll be running those monthly just to try and help people understand a wee bit